it is crazy what's going on with the Southern California fires right now. Because when I first saw this, my heart goes out to all those people that are impacted, whether they are homeowners, whether they're even renting in those areas, and respect to all the service workers that are able to try to do what they can to contain it. As of this recording, when I first heard of this, I wanted to do a video because here in the Bay Area, when it comes to real estate, a lot of things are going to be impacted. So I was already thinking, what are all the different components that will be impacted? But also, when I heard about this, I was like, wait a second, this is in Pacific Palisades, which is one of the nicest areas that you could even possibly live. When I was looking on online because I knew that area and kind of put on my real estate hat, I was like, wait a second, these are really expensive properties. I knew they were expensive, but now if you take a look with me on this, you can see that some of these homes are between $5 to $10 million. I took a look on Zillow, and you can see here, look at what is on the market right now to be sold, which most of these homes are probably gone. And if you sort it by the newest, you can see like some of them just literally just got on the market 10 hours ago. Absolutely crazy and just scary, right? I mean, it's just incredible of the timing of this. And so, man, and I mean, these are nice areas. And this is why when celebrities were making the noise about it, it's like, this is how he got much more publicity, blaming the mayor and all these different people. But this is crazy. So the question is, what happens afterwards, right? It's not that easy to rebuild these things. Not everybody has this kind of capital just laying around. If you think about it, real estate is a big part of many people's assets, right? Number two, if you need to rebuild, the question is, will insurance cover it? And we'll talk about that momentarily and how you may want to plan for this moving forward on yourself and what may happen. But it's not that simple to just simply, oh, I just want to rebuild. Because think about this. If all these homes are gone, which there are at least right now, I think there's a report at least thousands of homes are all completely destroyed. Well, there's going to be a huge queue. I took a look and just saw some stats related to because Santa Rosa was the closest one to us, right? And that was back in 2017. So it took about 6 years for the homes to be done. And many people never came back. Some people took the money and left, and they can then sell it to potentially developers, and developers may be able to build something else with it, right? But it took 6 years, but Santa Rosa is a much smaller wildfire incident than what we're dealing with right now. Take a look at the estimated damage so far. Right now, the estimated damage relative to that one in Sonoma County, Sonoma County was at $1.5 billion. This is 100 times bigger. I mean, this is crazy in terms of magnitude. And it's a combination of, because it's, one, the homes are a whole lot more expensive and the extent is a lot bigger. I mean, the density of LA is way, 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 way bigger than what you have in a place like Sonoma County, right? And so those two things are extremely impactful. So when I saw that first, I was like, my first thought to mind, just because of the work I'm in, I'm like, holy cow, what in the world happens to all of these places, right, that are on for sale? Like, they're all in trouble. All the ones that may be in contract, I mean, it's there. I mean, those new buyers are kind of, I mean, it sucks to say, but they're kind of lucky that they didn't close. And then imagine those people that just closed, right? Let's just do this in real time. Imagine if you literally just closed and how you would be feeling right now. Let's say you closed in the last 30 days. There were 20 homes that closed in this time. And look at these prices. I mean, these are not cheap homes. You got mobile home parks that are $500,000. You don't got any mobile home parks here in the Bay Area for $500,000, by the way. You got $2 million to $15 million homes that may or may not be around. Most likely they are completely decimated. So when I saw this first, and this is just one of the areas, even the other place that you never even have heard of unless you live in the area, like Altadena, I've never heard of that because that's a lot more, like much more north and north of Pasadena. But even those are hardworking people. Look at these homes. These are still between $1 million to $2 million. So considering in LA County, it's probably a starter home for many. And how do you think they got reserves? They're just sitting around to just rebuild homes, right? So crazy sad for all these people impacted. And even if some of those people were lucky and their homes were around, most of the neighbors have homes that are completely gone. Now, the question that leads, not only is this like a mind-boggling thing, right, in terms of how much destruction there is, of how valuable these places are. The next question will be related to, well, now what? One, they still are working on they're still working on all they need to take care of, right? Like the fires are still ongoing, so this is not the end. This can still get worse. It can still spread, so they're not out of the woods yet. But respect for all of the first responders. If you're a first responder, send out to me. I want to do something to take care of you, especially here in the Bay Area. Yeah, it's crazy bad, and everybody along the whole region needs to come in and to help because of just how massive this is. Like, people do not understand. The Santa Rosa fire was massive, but this is more than 100 times bigger than that. 100 times, right? And so if it took 6 years to do that, to like get things rebuilt, God knows how long it will take for this. Now, the thing that will now impact people here in the Bay Area, the people that own homes, the people that want to buy homes, very, very important, because at the end of the day, this thing has already happened. You have to plan accordingly. You can complain, but it is what it is. The question is, if you think about these areas, for a long time, big insurance providers would not cover it because they're all in the hills and they're much more high risk of fire. Now, there is no forecast that would have ever guessed this extent, though, because of how massive it is, right? Reinsurance providers are not even forecasting something this massive. And so because of that, the large insurance providers have already been exiting in these areas for a long time now. But what has occurred is we had the California Fair Plan. So the California Fair Plan is this basically secondary insurance provider, which has been really the only provider that has been able to do any of these, provide any of these insurance plans. They actually don't discriminate. They say, we will take everybody in. Now, we'll charge you a lot more, but we'll take everybody in. The always biggest concern with their model was, because they're willing to take everyone in, and a lot of these are really high risk, were they actually allocating the right math for this? So if you look at their history, you can see, because the next question I had was like, who's going to pay for this? Like, how is this going to even be paid? Take a look at the FAIR plan just so you can see itself. The FAIR plan does not routinely disclose its financial condition, but in March, they said that they had $200 million surplus. On one end, you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. On the other end, that's absolutely nothing. That additional $2.5 billion in reinsurance that would pay claims when the surplus is exhausted. In August, they said that there was a surplus of $350 million. I hope they were not just spending this randomly. But either way, this is a drop in the bucket, right? This is like absolutely nothing. So you look at that campfire in 2018, that was a $6 billion payout. And so there is no way that the FAIR plan is going to be able to cover all of this. So, and that's the challenge of insurance. And that's a really big challenge of when a state or a government is being involved with this, right? Because on one end, you're on the outside, there's no win for them, right? On the outside, the public is like, yeah, you got a ton of money. What, you're charging us way too much. You got plenty of money. And then when this massive event comes like this, they don't actually have anywhere close to enough money, right? Now, they do have some caps. And this goes back to, related to these places. It does cover up to $3 million in damage. But you saw many of those homes, especially those in the Pacific Palisades, they're very expensive to build because you're in the hills. I would not be surprised if your cost of construction in those areas, never mind if you're trying to make it something fancy, which many of them are, would not be surprised if it's like at maybe 800, 900 per square feet. now I don't know what it'll be. Maybe it'll be even higher because of how few contractors we have. I mean, imagine the amount of workload for those people, right? So it's gonna be very problematic across the board, and a lot of different things in my mind will be impacted. So number one, what happens with this? Will the fair plan? What can it go bankrupt? It probably has to. Then everybody's screwed with it, and then there is no more insurance, right? There's no more insurance, period, to pay out for them. There's no more insurance then for a lot of these places in the Bay Area that may be in the hills. That'll be an absolute disaster. Two, you can see Joe Biden has said they're going to give some relief efforts, but the relief efforts is like thousands of dollars. They're not bailing it out. At this point, a bailout may need to be a bailout has to happen, right? Because who's going to be funding this bill? Or they just leave everybody in the dark, but at the same time, then there's also I guess they can potentially bankrupt it. I'm not sure how it technically works on their end. They can bankrupt it so they don't pay those people out and then restart again and start collecting money. Or if they go bankrupt, they can't exist anymore, and then there's no secondary insurance, which means all those areas that are in the hills, they're kind of SOL, like they're in big trouble, right? Like either way, this was always supposed to be a band-aid. And when California wanted to become like the main insurance company, which they are now, because of how they wanted to play games with these insurance providers, now we're in this boat, right? So it's a really, really, really messy situation. Just when we thought the general market would do really, really well, this comes around, and this will greatly impact a lot of things. So now, all of the things are unfolding, but these are the big events, black swan events that are happening in real time. And so the question is, what should people potentially do about it, right? And what are the different players that are going to be impacted? So number one, if you think about it, if you're going to do any work, contracting work, things like that, you may as well do it right now, because as things get cleaned up and as things get claimed, those contractors are going to be crazy busy. And a lot of them will leave because there's going to be a big opportunity for them to do work in SoCal, right? Just like when Santa Rosa fires occurred, a lot of contractors here in Sacramento, all over, they did not do work there because all the big money was actually there to do work because all the opportunities were there. So if you're going to do anything, realistically, you should probably do it right now, because they're either going to increase their rates by a lot or they're going to be really busy and just leave. So that's going to be number one. Number two, we're going to have to continue to monitor this thing. Like, how will fair plan? Like, fair will still exist for a little bit longer, but then the question is, when it comes to claims and how do they pay things out, what will happen? Right? Like, what happens? They clearly do not have enough money. There's a huge deficit. And a lot of people in here would be covered by the fair plan, especially those in the really good areas. Now, the question, and we'll find this out over time, is the insurance companies, insurance providers, are generally able to cover the areas that are not as fire prone, so the ones not in the hills. So a lot of these areas, like at Altadena, I don't know if this area is in the... Let's just take a look at this. Let's just look at this in real time. I don't know if something like this is considered the high fire area, because while it's in the fire area, let's just see... let's just look on Redfin. Redfin has like this fire map. Almost like a fire hazard map thing. See, look at this. I guess it is on the higher enough. So this may have already been in the fair plan. But either way, I mean, the risk isn't as high as some of the others, but still, I'm just pulled a random example to see. Right? So it's gonna be interesting to see how much is actually covered by the fair plan. What will they be able to do? Are they only gonna then be able to, like, it's a first come first served claim? I mean, if that's the case, if you were affected by this, you may want to look into and talk to your insurance provider. Usually with the fair plan, you have the fair plan and then you have an insurance company. What you should do is, if you have a specific individual that you talk to from an insurance company perspective, you should reach out to that contact directly, and you should probably try to get in this queue as soon as possible, right? Because if it's going to be X amount of money, you do it as soon as you can. And I'm sure the lines are crazy busy for it, but if that's the case, you got to go in as soon as possible, right? As much as it's painful to see, you gotta react quickly for this. Now, what has happened for the Bay Area? This is going to be a mess for insurance companies. And so, for you that is buying a house, maybe you're in contract, maybe you're thinking about buying a house, maybe you already own a house. Whatever your situation is, talk to and have lots of insurance contacts. Reach out to me. I got insurance brokers. I got farmers contacts. I got all sorts of different insurance company contacts. Some of them, they're real contacts. You may just reach out to them online. But it's worth for you to understand all your different options now, right? And they may change, but you should have this as you're prepared and as almost this like Rolodex so that for you to rotate to. So these are all really, really important things that I would do right now, and I would highly suggest for you guys to do. Now, that's just preparing, right? Preparing for things. Now, certainly if you're in LA, if there's anything we can do, let us know. I know it's still a mess out there right now. If you're there, I'm sure you should have your go bag ready. You may already want to leave, right? Maybe leave out that entire area altogether. Make sure you pack all your stuff so that's ready to go. Have your valuables, and because if it gets impacted, it's just a disaster. And from what I hear and what is the reality of LA is, given the amount of people that are there, I'm sure it's just massive gridlock, and it's just you can see all those cars that were left. People just started to run off a foot because nothing was moving, right? Because think about it, if a person just abandons their car, it just blocks everything. So unless you had a bulldozer, which is what they did to get those fire trucks in, then you were just in like you're just kind of stuck there either way. Now the other thing that comes to mind is what happens to these areas, right? I mean, there's so much. On one end, they're valuable areas. On the other end, there's so much history there, right? But if all of the homes are gone and you need to rebuild, and not everybody will want to or has the ability to rebuild, what happens to these cities? I mean, think about it. What happens to these cities? Because some people will not be able to afford it. Some people will not want to do this again, right? And so some of these cities. And it's so sad. I remember I was at Palisades Village a few years ago. I went to also the Getty Villa, just not long ago, like just a couple of years ago, and all of those are completely gone, right? Completely destroyed. And so the question is always like, now what? Do these people just, if they get an insurance check, do they cash out and leave, or do they actually go through the efforts to rebuild? But if they only cover $3 million, a lot of it's going to be out of pocket. So the whole value of that, the whole area, the value should theoretically go down significantly, right? And at the same time, your insurance premiums in period will be a lot higher, right? There's no way the insurance premiums can stay the same. So be mindful that insurance premiums across the board got to be higher now, right? And if you are somebody that lives in the hills, be very mindful of that. If you're somebody that is thinking about buying the hills, be very mindful of that. I was always saying that we were pretty lucky, actually. Even the $10,000 a year for insurance, relative to the value of a home, was actually not that much if you think about it, right, in terms of ratios. And now it's going to potentially be in the realization that it should theoretically be a whole lot more, right? Because otherwise, who's going to be paying for this? And it's always a tricky thing, like I said before in the very beginning for the FAIR plan. There is no win for them. On one hand, people complain that it's so expensive, which it is. But one can argue that insurance premiums before were just artificially low. I mean, that's the only way you can look at it, right? Like, you pay, like, think about it, like, you pay $2,000 a year for a property that's between $1 to $3-4 million. I mean, reality-wise, that was a really low artificial number, and so with that, it just can't sustain this way. There's just no way, and technically, it's not even fire season right now either. If you think about it, right? This is not even fire season. This is just this is winter. It's just like some crazy winds and maybe some. They're discovering maybe some things happen as to why this occurred. But either way, just really, really sad to see.
But I wanted to make this video because of my background in real estate and how I was kind of thinking about all these different things and how all the different pieces are going to be impacted. So leave in the comments below with what your thoughts are. How would this change? I'd love to get your opinions. Maybe you know a little bit more than me about how the coverage is. Maybe I'm not thinking of all the right things. I want to have this as a dialogue. And yeah, it's terrible. And make no mistake, a lot of these are not just homeowners, right? Many are these rentals. So all those people that are renting in these places, they got to figure out something too. They got to go somewhere. I'm not sure where they'll go. They have to figure out somewhere. So it's just a giant relocation cluster and a massive issue, right? And especially this in terms of wildfires, like this is a hundred times at this time, and it's not done yet. That's the scary part, right? Okay. Well, if you want to talk about anything, I'm here to be a resource. I'm here to try to assist however I can within my powers. Happy to have a dialogue. My contact details will be below. And hopefully everyone else that's in LA that hasn't been impacted yet, hopefully they contain it. Respect to all the first responders. If you're a first responder, reach out to me. We'll have to do something for you guys. Okay. Stay safe.